Hey, what's going on, Warhammer World? This is Obsidian Anubis, and I'm back with another 9th Age Battle Report. This is Game 2 of the OFCC, which is a tournament we have up here in the Pacific Northwest. So if you guys haven't gone back and watched Game 1 yet, I would suggest you go back and watch Game 1 before you watch Game 2, because I'm about to give you a couple spoilers. Okay, I'll assume you're still with me if you want to watch this game. So, I just came off a 20-0 victory against a fantastically painted Lizardman army with a fantastic player. It was great. It's my first battle I've ever played at a tournament, and it was amazing. So after coming off that victory, I went to the second round with a relatively high ego at the moment, and I found out I was playing the organizer of the tournament, who was playing Beastmen, which was fantastic because I've never played Beastmen. Well, I played them once or twice in 8th edition, but never in 9th edition, so I was really looking forward to playing this army. So my army list is on a brush and fluff video number 2, so if you haven't seen that, I would suggest you go see that and you can see what's on my list. For my opponent, the battlefield was the diagonal deployment, and the secondary objective was secure the target. There's 2 tokens which I've circled in red. One is up on the hill by my Spider Riders. The other is by my Gargantula in that forest. So apparently spiders like these tokens. Not sure. You can see how I deployed. I have my Iron Orcs on the far left on the hill. Next to my Feral Orcs. Behind that is my Wizard. I then have my Feral Giant and my Spider in the woods. Next to that is my Cave Goblins and Forest Goblins with my Git Launcher behind that. And then I have my Boar Boys. I just kind of have them back here because I know my opponent has ambushers, so I kind of want to put them here so if my opponent deployed to try to take out my Git Launcher, I could countercharge. For my opponent, he went ahead and dropped his entire army first, so I got to drop in response to him. So he dropped a Raiding Chariot here on the right, followed by 2 Gortaks. And I don't know where these models came from. They're not Games Workshops, but they are fantastic models. I think they really work for Gortaks. So I think my opponent, once he gets these guys painted and fully put together, I think they're going to look amazing. Next to them is a Beast Lord who also, I think, looks amazing. He's on a chariot, but I mean, he looks like a mount, but it looks fantastic to me. I really like this model. So this general has an Ogle Sword, Dragon Scale Helm, Sprout of Rebirth, and the Hunting Call and Horn, which I assume if you are a Beastman player, you know what that means. I am not a Beastman player, so I have no idea what that means. Next to that is a group of 7 Minotaurs with paired weapons, and in that group is a Minotaur Chieftain with a BSB and the Armor of Destiny. Behind them is a Soothsayer with Path of Wilderness. You can kind of see him just peeking up behind the Minotaurs. And next to that is a Cyclops, who is basically a rock lobber. Next to that is another 2 Raiding Chariots, and then on my opponent's far left is a group of 5 Gargoyles. So as my opponent dropped first, he got to go first, so I got to place in response. But here we go. Beast Herds turn 1. So on the right hand flank, my opponent just pretty much moved up fairly aggressively, especially with the chariot. And over here on the left, he did the same. And then he flew his Gargoyles to the left of my Iron Orcs. My Iron Orcs are on the hill, they just wouldn't fit, so I have 2 Iron Orcs just marking the front of their base. In Magic Phase, my opponent managed to get Cloud Eye Totem off on the, Clouded Eye Totem, excuse me, on the Raiding Chariot. Just this gave it hard target and magic resistant 3. This is the Raiding Chariot next to my Git Launcher. He also got a Black Wing Totem off on his Minotaurs. This gave them +3 initiative and gave them D3+1 to their charge range. So they could probably charge me next turn if I didn't move. So in shooting, my opponent's Rock Lobber shot at my Gargantula and hit and did 4 wounds. So ouch, that hurt. Half my wounds on my spider gone in 1 turn. Not what I wanted, but oh well. I think I can make it work. So that brings us to Sharnuk's Horde turn 1. So on the right side, I moved up my goblins fairly aggressively because I wanted to get them in range of the fanatics to shoot at some of those Gortaks. And the rest of my army, I actually moved back a couple of inches to just make my opponent a little bit harder for him to charge me. So if he did declare charge, there was a high percentage he would fail, and then I could countercharge on my turn. In Magic Phase, I managed to get the Stars of Line off. I think I got this off on my Ferals, although I'm not sure at this moment. And other than that, I didn't get any magic off. In shooting, I did shoot out my Fanatics. 1 hit the Gortak and did 4 wounds. The other 2 stopped short. And that brings us to Beast Herds turn 2. So in shooting, in charges, my opponent charged my Forest Spiders with Forest Goblins with his Raiding Chariot. I stand and shot and did absolutely nothing. He also charged his first Gortak into my Goblins. I'm running through one of my Fanatics and killing the Fanatic, but you know what? The Fanatic killed the Gortak, so I think that was an equal. I would take that trade. The other chariot, of course, easily made it in without a single wound from my Goblins. Other than that, my opponent decided to just move up and let me charge him next turn. My opponent also had 2 ambushing wild horns, I think they're called. Sorry if I said that wrong. So one group moved over here by this icon just to get the totem or the secure the target. The other one moved up behind my lines. In close combat, my opponent easily managed to break and chase my goblins off the table, and then just turn to face my Git launcher so he can charge it next turn. So that brings us to Sharnuk's Horde, turn 2. So of course, being a bloodthirsty Feral Orc, I declared the Wog and charged in my Feral Orcs into his Minotaurs. I also charged my Iron Orcs into the Gargoyles that were chaffing them up, as well as charging my Goblins into the Gortak. Was this a smart decision? Maybe not, but I was hoping I could just charge in and kind of tie him up so he couldn't do anything next round. Yeah, here's a picture of those incoming Gortak, or incoming Wild Horns on my opponent's last turn. In Magic Phase, I managed to get the Inner Rage off on my Cave Goblins. This was somewhat of a throwaway spell. I just wanted to kind of get my opponent to use dice so I could get Beast Within off on my Feral Orcs. Unfortunately, my opponent saw right through this and let me cast this off, which made it so I didn't have to make a terror test against my opponent, which was kind of nice. So I automatically passed that. How he did dispel my Beast Within off on my Feral Orcs. So going to close combat, yeah, well, it was, I would say, a stalemate. He killed about 10 of my Feral Orcs. I killed off 4 of his Minotaurs and put a couple wounds on his BSB. And my general is not dead. He just fell over in this particular picture. But yeah, I would say it's pretty much a stalemate. My Iron Orcs, of course, easily wiped out the Gargoyles and just turned to face the incoming chariots. And this picture is a bad picture, but what it's trying to show is my Night Goblins fighting the Gortak. I lost like 5 or so goblins, but I actually broke the Gortak. So, and I attempted to chase, but unfortunately I didn't catch him. So that brings us to Beast Hertz turn 3. So of course for charges, he countercharged with 1 raiding chariot and his general into my Feral Orcs. He also charged his wild horns into my Feral Giant, into the rear of my Feral Giant, who failed a charge against his general last turn. He also charged his other raiding chariot into my Git launcher, which had been up to this point useless, so it probably deserved to die. He did unfortunately rally his Gortak, as you can see in this picture. And then for regular movement, he moved his wizard in between my goblins and his general, so I couldn't charge it with my spiders. He also moved his other raiding chariot on the left-hand side to chaff up my Iron Orcs. If you see that little white dice on the hill, that's actually where the chariot is, not where it is at the bottom. It's actually on the hill. In Magic Phase, my opponent got Beast Within off on his Beastmen, on his Minotaurs. I tried to dispel this, but I just didn't have enough dice. And so with impact hits alone, he rolled double 6s for his impact hits, so he had 13 impact hits coming in. I think probably 9 of those or 11 of those wounded, and so I lost a whole rank right there before my opponent even swung. And my opponent went before me, being initiative 4, and wiped out the rest of the unit. So all I had was my general and my BSB. Not surprisingly, I broke. My opponent pursued, but actually did not manage to catch me. And in this combat, my opponent did 3 wounds to my Feral Giant, and I managed to kill off 3. I'm a stubborn 9 or stubborn 10, and so I passed my panic test at least. So that brings us to Sharnuk's Horde turn 3. Well, for charges, because my opponent broke my general last turn and overran, I could now see his wizard or get to his wizard, so I charged my spiders into his wizard, who decided to flee. I failed the charge, but I did move at least enough out of the way that I could charge my goblins into his Gortak. And sadly, I also charged my spider into his Minotaurs, and then attempted to rally my general and BSB, but I failed. On a 9, I failed, so that was very sad. If he would have rallied, I would have had a chance, but he did not rally, so both him and the BSB continued to run towards the edge of the board. My spider easily made it into combat. Yeah, so this is a picture showing that my general and BSB failed to rally and ran. You can also see that the raiding chariot easily wiped out my Git launcher and turned to face this turn. My wizard failed his frenzy test and charged into the flank of the wild horns, and the Brio Beast showed up on my opponent's last turn. In Magic Phase, I managed to get the Stars Line off on, I think, the Spider, as well as Blizzard off on my opponent's Minotaurs, so that helped at least. But, yeah, so we both swung at Initiative 4. I think I whiffed my attack, so I put 1 or 2 wounds on my opponent, saved him, and my Spider died. Not good. My opponent also managed to put 2 more wounds onto my Feral Giant, so I just have 1 wound left, and I think my Giant whiffed his attacks, or he did the yell and ball, so he automatically won by 2, but my opponent easily had a general right there, so it didn't matter. So that wasn't good. So that brings us to Beast Herde's turn 4. So, my opponent declared a charge with his chariot into my Feral Giant, and his general charged my general, who automatically had to flee and fled right off the board. So that was not what I wanted. He also declared a charge with his Wild Horns into the flank of my Goblins, who actually did manage to do like 3 wounds to the Gortak. And, I mean, they took lots of wounds in return, but they had Steadfast on actually only Steadfast 5. And actually I may have won combat, or if I did, I happened to pass my panic test. One of the two. In Magic Phase, my opponent got the Bloodhorn Totem off on his Wild Horns fighting my Giant, as well as getting the Black Wing Totem, which they gain +3 initiative and plus D3 +1 charge range. And other than that, that was all. This is the last picture I have for Beast Herde's turn 4. He killed my Feral Giant, and he killed and wiped out my Goblins fighting the Gortak. So this brings us to Sharnuk's Horde turn 4. And this is what I have right now. So my Spiders are actually fleeing at the moment. And my Feral Orcs, they charged the Briar Beast and killed and wiped it out at least, but are now sitting ducks for my opponent's counter charge. So Beast Herde's turn 5. So my opponent put a chariot up last turn to chaff my Iron Orcs. However, on my turn I failed my stupidity test because I had the Wizarding Hood, so I actually didn't do anything. So my opponent decided, might as well charge in. So charged in his chariot and his Minotaurs into my Iron Orcs. And you can see that's how it looks like. My opponent also charged his general into the flank of my Boar Boys. And in Magic Phase, my opponent managed to get Beast Within off on the Minotaurs. However, he did miscast this and sucked his Wizard into the Vortex. So at least I got that going for me. So that brings us to close combat. So let me go back a picture. So I have, I think, 25 more or less Iron Orcs plus character at the beginning of combat. After combat, I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Iron Orcs plus my character. Luckily, I am stubborn because I have my Iron Orc, so I've gained Bodyguard. I did put a couple wounds on the chariot, and I wiped out the rest of the Minotaur unit, but this unit is probably not long for the world. So that brings us to Sharnuk's Horde turn 5. I did manage to get the Stars Line off on my Iron Orcs at least, so they had a little bit of a bonus there. And other than that, I had no other units on the battlefield, so that goes straight into close combat. And I think I put a couple more wounds on the chariot. My opponent put 1 wound on my character and killed a couple of my Iron Orcs, but I still had 3 Iron Orcs and my Iron Orc Chieftain alive, so they were still stubborn and held. And that brings us to Beast Herde's turn 6. So my opponent just charged my Spiders to get them farther off the board, although they didn't actually flee this turn, but on my next turn they fled off the board. He just moved his Wild Horns over to secure the target, and his other Wild Horns and his Cyclops, who had broken its arm or couldn't shoot for the rest of the game after like turn 2, charged the flanks of my Iron Orcs, so they are probably going to die this turn. My opponent also managed to cast the Bloodhorn Totem to give his unit +1 attack and armor piercing 2 on his Wild Horns in the flank of my Iron Orcs. And then in combat, I did manage to kill the BSB with I threw all my units' attacks at the BSB and managed to kill him, and I threw all my character attacks at the chariot and managed to kill it. However, my opponent did kill my character, so I have 3 Iron Orcs, but they're no longer steadfast because my Iron Orc bodyguard is gone. And so this unit broke on his turn. My opponent chased with both the Wild Horns and the Cyclops, and they actually failed to catch. On my turn, which is the last turn of the game, I rallied my Iron Orcs, so I maintained at least half the points. So that was the end of the game. So it ended up being a, I think a 5-15 loss for me. So overall, it was a defeat, but it was a real fun game. I really enjoyed, especially when my Iron Orcs were on top of the hill and his Minotaurs were just chasing up the hill towards them. That was fantastic. I was laughing and having a great time with my opponent. He was a fantastic opponent. I think some of the things I did wrong was mainly just how I deployed and how I worked out my army. I think obviously being stupid that one turn with my Iron Orcs didn't help, but I mean if I did this game again, I think I'd have done it similar to how I did this one. I just think my opponent definitely just outplayed me in this game, and his impact hits with his general and his chariot that one turn into my ferals just broke my back right there, doing 11 kills in just one hit in one turn. That just really hurt. But other than that, it was like I said, it was a fantastic game and fantastic opponent. So I had a 20-0 on my first game, and now I had a 5-15 loss. Although because I was playing the organizer and who was also the ringer, because we had an odd number, the max I could lose by was 10. So technically, I lost by 10. I had 10 points instead of 5. So I was at 30 points now after the first two games. So not too bad, but it did push me back down a little bit. But that's okay. I didn't really come here to win the tournament. I just came here to play great players. And so far, both my players have been fantastic. So that's really what I came here to play, and that's what I wanted to get most out of this tournament. So far, 100% for great games, great opponents. Other than that, if you guys saw any mistakes I made, please comment in the section below. As always, if you guys could hit like and subscribe, that'd be fantastic. And I hope to get Game 3 up by the end of the week. So other than that, game on.